The airport buzzed like a hive, announcements blaring, rolling suitcases clattering, the smell of burnt coffee thick in the air. I stood at the check-in counter with my small, worn-out luggage, pretending I didn't hear my father's voice slice through the noise behind me. "Even economy is too expensive for her," he whispered to my mother, but loud enough for the people in line to hear. "Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation. Be honest, tell me in the comments below." We read every comment. Let's begin. A few heads turned. My sister, Allison, snorted. Maybe she can just tag along as someone's plus one. That's the only class she belongs in. I swallowed the burn in my throat and forced a small smile. "Morning to you too, Allison." My father adjusted his jacket and looked me up and down like I was a stain he couldn't scrub out. "You could have saved yourself this embarrassment, Claire. You know you can't afford this trip. First class tickets aren't charity." "I'm not asking for yours," I said quietly. He chuckled, a sound that carried more venom than humor. "No, you just came to remind us how far you've fallen." The gate agent handed my mother her boarding passes with a polished smile. My parents and Allison moved toward the VIP lane, their designer luggage wheels gliding across the floor like they belonged on red carpets. I stayed behind, still waiting, still silent. But deep inside, there was no anger, just a pull-steady calm. Because this time, I wasn't the same daughter they had thrown away 3 years ago. My family didn't know who was coming for me. "Claire Lawson," a crisp voice called out. I turned. A young gate attendant stood by the private security corridor, holding a tablet. Her expression shifted instantly when she saw me. "Ma'am, right this way, please. Your transport has arrived." My father froze mid-step. "Her what?" The agent hesitated, glancing at him before repeating carefully, "Her transport, sir. The commander sent for her personally." Before they could react, a low rumble echoed across the hall. Heads turned as 2 airport security officers stepped aside, and a tall man in a dark jacket strode through the VIP entrance. Broad shoulders, crisp posture, and a face that made people move without him saying a word. Ryan Lawson, my husband. His presence silenced the entire area. The gate agent straightened and one even stammered, "Commander Lawson, sir, your jet's ready at Hangar 3. Ryan's eyes found mine instantly, steady, protective, warm beneath the steel. He walked up, took my bag with one hand, and brushed a soft kiss across my forehead. "Sorry I'm late, sweetheart. Crew's waiting." My father blinked like the ground had shifted under him. Commander Lawson?" Ryan turned slightly, polite but firm. "Yes, sir. United States Air Command." He nodded once. "Your daughter's flight is private today." The gate agent stepped aside immediately. "Right this way, Mrs. Lawson." Ryan offered me his arm. "Ready." I glanced at my family, frozen, speechless. Allison's phone slipped from her hand, hitting the floor with a hollow clack. "I'm ready," I said softly. As we walked past, I caught my father's reflection in the glass. Jaw tight, eyes wide. The same man who once said I'd end up begging for help. Now, he couldn't even lift his own luggage, paralyzed by disbelief. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. The revenge wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was the quiet dignity of walking past the people who once measured my worth, and realizing I'd outgrown their currency. The air outside the VIP corridor was sharp and bright, humming with engines and the smell of jet fuel. The glass doors slid open, and sunlight spilled across the runway. Parked ahead was a sleek silver jet, polished like a mirror, with 2 crew members already standing at attention beside the stairway. The gate agent's voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "Commander Lawson, the jet's been refueled and cleared for departure. Captain Reeves is awaiting final confirmation." Ryan nodded calmly, his hand still resting against the small of my back. "Thank you." Then, with a faint smile that always carried both warmth and authority, he turned to me. "After you, Mrs. Lawson." Every word, every gesture, seemed to pull the air out of the space around us. Behind the glass, my father, mother, and Allison were still visible, their silhouettes frozen in disbelief. My father's hand was half raised like he was trying to call me back, but couldn't form the words. Allison stood gaping, her sunglasses dangling uselessly from her fingers. My mother had that familiar, polite smile, but it trembled now, the kind that barely hides regret. I didn't wave. Ryan guided me forward, his fingers brushing mine. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Better than I've ever been," I said, my voice steady. It was the truth. Every step toward that jet felt like reclaiming the pieces of myself I had lost to their laughter. The girl they called a disappointment, the daughter who wasn't family material, the sister who would never marry up. They'd stripped me of pride once. Today, I was taking it back. The crew saluted as Ryan and I approached. "Good morning, Commander Lawson," they greeted in unison. He nodded in acknowledgement. "Good morning, team. Let's get her comfortable. We'll be wheels up in 10. "Yes, sir." Ryan turned to me again, his voice softening. "You sure you're ready for this flight?" I smiled faintly. "You mean watching my family realize what respect looks like?" "Yeah, I think I can handle that." He chuckled under his breath. "That's my girl." Inside, the jet gleamed. Cream leather seats, golden light pouring through oval windows, polished wood accents. Everything about it screamed quiet power. I sat down and watched through the tinted glass as the airport outside moved like a slow film reel. My family had just reached the end of the VIP line, their expressions pale and disoriented. My father was arguing with the gate staff, his hands flying in frustration. I couldn't hear him, but I knew that tone. It was the same one he used whenever the world didn't bend to his ego. Ryan glanced at me. "Do you want to tell them anything?" "No," I said softly. "They wouldn't understand anyway." He tilted his head, studying me. "Then let them wonder." I nodded, my eyes drifting back to the window. My father's expensive watch glinted in the sunlight as he pointed at the runway, realizing, too late, that the jet they were watching was mine. Their expressions were priceless. Allison's mouth fell open, and my mother clutched her purse to her chest like it might protect her from reality. I remembered the last words my father said to me 3 years ago. "You'll regret walking away from this family." Now, watching him from the comfort of a private cabin, I realized I didn't regret leaving. I regretted not leaving sooner. Ryan sat beside me, crossing one leg over the other with that calm composure he wore like armor. "When I first met you," he said, "you were working 2 jobs and still managing to smile through everything. That's what made me notice you. Not the noise around you, the grace." I looked at him, my chest tightening. "You believed in me when no one else did." He smiled. "Because I saw what they didn't, a woman who could stand on her own and never break." The engines roared softly beneath us, and the pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Commander Lawson, clearance confirmed. Ready for takeoff." Ryan looked to me. "You want to do the honors?" I blinked. "Me?" He grinned. "Say it." I took a deep breath and pressed the comm button. "Captain Reeves," I said, steady but trembling inside. "You're clear to take us home." "Copy that, ma'am." The jet began to roll. Outside, the world blurred into motion, the glass terminal shrinking, the tarmac racing past, the silhouettes of my family turning into tiny, stunned in the distance. Ryan reached for my hand as the nose lifted off the ground. "You know," he said, "revenge doesn't always need words. Sometimes silence is louder." I smiled faintly and heavier. The city fell away below us, and clouds swallowed the sky. I closed my eyes and let the sound of the engines drown out every insult, every memory of being called not enough. Because the truth was simple, I didn't need them to see me win. I just needed to stop needing their approval to feel whole. As the jet climbed higher, Ryan turned toward me, his voice low. "We could have taken the regular flight, you know." "I know," I said, turning to face him, "but some lessons are best taught publicly." He laughed quietly, shaking his head. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." "Too late," I teased, smiling for real this time. "You married it." Through the window, the clouds stretched endlessly ahead, soft, golden, and infinite. Below them, somewhere far beneath the sky, stood the same people who once decided I wasn't worth the price of a ticket. They could keep their first-class seats. I had something better: freedom, love, and a life that didn't require their validation. And as Ryan leaned closer, whispering, "You've got quite the view now, Mrs. Lawson," I couldn't help but whisper back, "Yeah." And for the first time, it's all mine. The jet sliced through the clouds, the hum of the engine steady and low, like a heartbeat syncing with mine. Below, the city was nothing but a patchwork of lights and motion, tiny, distant, powerless. It felt poetic somehow. The world that once crushed me now looked so small. Ryan sat across from me, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, eyes scanning a report on his tablet. Even in silence, his presence filled the cabin, steady, composed, protective. I sipped my coffee and looked out the window again, my reflection blending with the sky. "You know," I said quietly, "when I used to sit on commercial flights, I'd always stare at the private jets on the runway and wonder what kind of people flew in them. I never imagined one day I'd be on one." Ryan looked up, smiling faintly. "You earned this, Claire." "Earned?" I laughed softly, shaking my head. "You saw what my father said out there. They'll think I got lucky again." He leaned forward, eyes steady. "You didn't get lucky. You built this life, piece by piece. You worked your way through a degree. You started your design firm from your kitchen table, and when your family turned their backs, you still didn't fold. Don't give them the credit for what you built." His words sank deep. I'd heard him say things like that before, but today they hit differently, maybe because I finally believed them. I used to think I needed to prove myself to them, I admitted. Every achievement, every step forward, I wanted them to see it, to say they were proud. Ryan tilted his head slightly. "And now?" I looked out the window again. Now I realize pride doesn't mean much when it's conditional. He smiled faintly, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "You're stronger than any of them, you know that?" I squeezed his hand gently. I used to feel small around them. Today, I didn't. The jet tilted slightly as it began to level off, the captain's voice coming through the speaker. "We're cruising at 40,000 feet, Commander. Smooth air all the way to New York." Ryan pressed the comm button. "Thank you, Captain. Maintain course." I watched him as he spoke, so calm, so confident. There was something grounding about him, I remembered the day I met him 3 years ago at a small community event where I was displaying my first few designs. My booth was practically empty, while others were crowded. Then he showed up, this quiet man in uniform who spent half an hour looking through my sketches like they were blueprints for something more. When I told him I couldn't even afford proper printing paper, he smiled and said, "Then we'll start with what we have." That's how everything began, with belief, not wealth. The intercom chimed again. "Commander, we'll be landing in 40 minutes. Estimated ground temperature in New York is 72 degrees. Ryan glanced at me. "You still okay?" "Better than okay," I said. "But I keep thinking about their faces back there." He chuckled. "Hard to forget. It's not revenge I wanted," I said quietly. "I just wanted them to stop seeing me as the failure, the one who didn't fit into their perfect picture." Ryan leaned back. "Sometimes you don't need to fit in. You just need to outgrow the frame." I smiled faintly at his words. Outside, clouds drifted past like white mountains. The sunlight flickered across the cabin floor, warm and golden. For the first time in years, my heart felt light, not because they finally saw my worth, but because I no longer needed them to. A soft knock on the cabin door interrupted us. A flight attendant peeked in. "Commander, we're approaching airspace clearance for private hangar entry. Should I notify ground transport?" "Yes," Ryan said, then looked at me. "Your team's meeting us there." "My team?" He smiled. "You've got 2 new clients waiting at the design office tonight. Apparently, they were impressed with your last portfolio." I blinked in surprise. "You didn't tell me that." He shrugged. "Didn't want to distract you from your moment." I laughed softly. "You're impossible." As we descended, the skyline of New York rose beneath us. Tall, sharp, beautiful. I thought about all the nights I'd stayed awake sketching designs by candlelight, dreaming of seeing my name on something that mattered. Now I was flying over the same city that once rejected me, and I wasn't scared anymore. The jet landed smoothly, the runway gleaming under the sunset. A black car waited at the hangar, engine idling. 2 uniformed attendants stood beside it, saluting as Ryan stepped out first. Cameras flashed from a distance, airport staff, journalists, maybe even a few onlookers who had spotted the insignia on the jet. Ryan extended a hand to me. "Ready to face the ground again?" I smiled, slipping my fingers into his. "It looks different from up here." As we walked down the stairs, I caught sight of a familiar group of people emerging from the arrivals gate. My family. Their faces were pale, exhausted, dragging their own luggage under the weight of delayed flights and economy transfers. My father froze when he saw us. My mother's lips parted, and Allison's eyes went wide. "Claire," my father stammered. I smiled politely, keeping my tone calm. "Welcome to New York, Dad." He blinked. You came on that?" He pointed toward the jet behind me. Ryan stepped beside me, his expression unreadable. "Yes, sir. My wife doesn't fly commercial." The silence that followed was delicious, heavy with disbelief, thick with the weight of realization. My father's hand trembled slightly. "Claire, I lifted a hand gently. "Don't. You already said enough at the airport." For a long second, no one spoke. Then I turned toward the car, sliding my hand into Ryan's again. "Some people spend their whole lives waiting for others to lift them up," I said softly. "But sometimes you have to learn to take off on your own." We got into the car, and as the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of them standing there, still stunned, still small in the glow of the hangar lights. The engines roared once more in the background, echoing the only truth that mattered now. I didn't just rise above them. I rose beyond them. The drive into the city was quiet, only the faint hum of the engine filling the space. The skyline glittered through the tinted windows, glass towers piercing a golden sky. My reflection looked back at me, calm, older, freer. Ryan rested one arm behind me, his hand lightly brushing my shoulder. "You handled that perfectly back there," he said, his voice low, steady. I exhaled slowly. "You know what's strange? I thought I'd feel angry or proud or something loud. But I don't. It's just quiet inside." "That's peace," he said. "You earned it." We pulled up in front of the Grand Meridian Hotel, where the wedding rehearsal was being held. Flashing cameras greeted us again. Reporters had caught word that Commander Lawson's jet had arrived. Ryan stepped out first, his posture effortlessly commanding, then offered his hand to me. As I stepped onto the carpet, whispers rippled through the crowd. Someone muttered, "That's her?" Another whispered, "That's the girl her family said was broke?" I didn't need to respond. The truth spoke for itself. Inside the ballroom, chandeliers blazed, and soft music filled the air. My father stood near the buffet, drink in hand, pretending not to see me. My mother glanced over, but looked away just as fast. Allison clutched her clutch, so tightly her knuckles went white. Ryan leaned close, his lips near my ear. "Wanna leave?" I smiled faintly. "No. I want to be here." Just quietly. The same people who once laughed at my simple dresses were now shifting uncomfortably as I passed in a floor-length satin gown. I didn't need diamonds or dramatics. Confidence was the most expensive thing in the room, and I was wearing it. Halfway through dinner, my father finally approached, his voice lower than usual. "Claire." I looked up slowly. "Dad." He hesitated, glancing at Ryan, then back at me. "I may have misjudged things." "You did," I said softly, not cruelly, just truthfully. He swallowed hard. "You turned out well." I nodded. "I always would have, even without your approval." He looked down, ashamed, and for a moment, I saw something I never had before. Regret. Not the kind that fixes anything, but the kind that quietly admits defeat. "Claire," my mother began, forcing a shaky smile. "We didn't mean." "Yes, you did," I interrupted gently. "And that's okay, because now I don't need you to mean otherwise." She froze. Ryan placed his hand on mine. "We should go," he said softly. I stood, smoothing my dress. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," I said to them both. Then I walked away. Outside, the air was cool, the city lights reflecting off the marble steps. For a second, I just stood there, breathing free. Ryan stepped behind me, his voice calm. "You didn't have to say anything, but you did." "I didn't do it for them," I said quietly. "I did it for the version of me that once cried for their approval." He nodded, smiling. "And she's proud of you now." We walked back to the car. The driver opened the door, and as I slid inside, I caught one last glimpse of the ballroom through the window. My family still standing where I'd left them, silent, small, no longer towering over me. As the car rolled away, Ryan took my hand, thumb brushing across my knuckles. "You know, Claire," he said with a quiet grin, "the ground really does look different when you rise above it." I smiled, watching the city lights blur into streaks of gold. "It does," I whispered, "and the silence finally feels good." The jet waited for us at the private hangar again, engines humming softly. Before boarding, I turned once more toward the night sky, the same sky that had watched me break, rebuild, and rise. They could keep their judgment, their luxury, their shallow pride. Because tonight, I wasn't the girl left behind. I was the woman they could no longer reach.